Well, hello there everybody, welcome back for another tutorial. My name is Mikey and we are going to be continuing our foreshortening tutorial series. We've done a video about low angle foreshortening, looking up at your characters. We've done one about high angle foreshortening and a perspective when you look down. So hopefully the links to them are kind of up there on screen at the moment. But another kind of very big common player when you're drawing your anime pictures to give them loads of jump and pizzazz is foreshortening just specific limbs. Maybe you've got a character where their hand is coming towards the viewer, where they're doing a kick or something like that that's coming out towards us, and that has a completely different ratio and perspective to the other elements of character. So we're going to have a crack at that using the rules and the basic principles we've discussed in the last two videos. But don't worry if you've not watched them. In general, as long as you know about the basics of perspective and drawing vanishing points, then you're going to have everything you need to crack on and join at home. So get yourself a sheet of paper, get yourself a cheap pencil. I like this disposable mechanical one I get from a Papermate pack. A rubber should you need it, and it never hurts to have a bit of paper. If you ever watch people's drawing videos and they rest their hands on paper, it's because your hand gives off natural greases and oils, and it will actually just affect the paper and the page and make your area on the right, or the left if you're left-handed, smudge up and a bit worse to work on. So keep that in mind. Now, what I'm going to do is try to fit in maybe 4 examples on this sheet of paper. And the first one's going to fall back to the low angle perspective. Now, what I'm getting at here is if we imagine a character that we see in a low angle, excuse me, and I'm going to draw a very rough box shape to this effect, something like this. So it's vanishing off away from us as we look up towards a character. But instead of going all the way up, let's imagine that we're working with 2 different vanishing points, 2 different angles. So this character is going to be bent over. Maybe they're standing up here. This is where the bum is. But maybe the body is then just shooting off down a completely different perspective, going off to the side. It's not an uncommon pose. So we're going to work with that. And we're using this box shape to give us an idea of where the character is going to fit in and how we're going to perceive the form. So if you imagine that we're looking up from just below foot height for this character, we'll have one leg that goes all the way up, but the top area will actually be the bum. So if we just get the hip kind of zone roughly around about here, it's foreshortened away from us. And what's going to be coming towards us as a viewer will end up being the legs of this character dropping down. So if we have one bum cheek around about there, just a very rough ellipse, and then again another bum cheek just arcing off there and round, becoming the leg, then what we will do is we'll just fill in that center space and imagine that a leg comes down here right towards us, maybe the other leg stepping forward a bit, so it would be just behind. So what we can do from there is bring this curve around to get the thigh in. Now, I've done a tutorial in a very basic sense about drawing the basic shapes of legs. So if you've not had an opportunity to take a look at that, go and have a watch now. And what we're just doing is we're working from that knowledge, but really just creating a shape that's going to be much more foreshortened towards us. So this line actually comes all the way around and down, just in like that with the inside edge of a thigh. And where the back of the knee is around about here, this is then just going to continue to grow out. So maybe there's a bit of knee flesh to either side with the tendons and ligaments, and then a really large calf muscle coming right towards us as a viewer, down here and around off there. So they've got one leg coming down in. Because this one's going slightly forward as well, we'll just maybe curve this one in slightly behind. Again though, around about this point we've got somewhere where the backs of the knees will be, and again the calf muscles will just be bringing this character's leg out, but then still dropping away perhaps behind the other one, like so. So that's how we've foreshortened our way up, away from this character. We've got our disappearing point going right off up there, but everything's looking up from a thicker calf because it's nearer, and then everything's getting smaller as it gets slightly further away. But then, if we go in a different direction this time, maybe the body's going to go forward like this. So I'm going to use this zone not to be the head perhaps, maybe just more the top of the chest. So if we imagine our chest ellipse off at an angle like so, it means that our hips kind of curve off around this space. The middle body section curves off around about that space, and it means somewhere up here we're going to have our character's head. Now normally I'd turn this piece of paper around so that I can draw this head upright and make it just much easier, but it won't quite fit on the camera in the frame of a shot. So you guys at home, move your paper around all the time with your art. It makes things much easier. I'm just trying to draw a head shape from a slightly different angle for the sake of this tutorial. So it might not be perfect, but as long as you get an idea. And then we know we can pop maybe a shoulder circle around about there. The one on the other side we won't quite see. I think from this viewpoint there's probably going to be just a bit of boob around about here that we can map against the chest and the body. Again, the outside edge curves up towards the armpit would be, and then just off on the other side. And then we can do one of those kind of classic, slightly etchy style things, maybe just dealing with her knickers or something like that. So if we have a hand here, and when we've got difficult mapping to be done, you'll notice I've gone from the shoulder straight to the hand. I know where I want to put the hand of this character. Maybe we'll have a thumb point just off here, something like that. And then we'll have the fingers perhaps just coming up here. Never going to be a perfect hand that I end up drawing in these tutorials, but something like this to get an idea across that the thumb's kind of snagging on to the line of the underwear, something like that. Or maybe it's going to be jeans or something else. No, it's too far away. It's got to be underwear. Can't help it. And then now that I've just put the hand where I want the hand to be, then I'll allow it to join up with the arms. And that's something that you can always do when you've got some difficult poses. The hands are quite often going to be interacting with something. They're the tools for dealing with things. So their placement often becomes really more important perhaps than the angle of the arm that joins them up. So dropping a hand, and then in this instance I'm actually connecting it back through to the body. Hopefully it's not going to look too crazy out of whack, and get the idea across. Excuse me, I am getting over a cold, so I'm going to clear my throat a lot this episode. Please forgive me. Now, if we go on this other side as well, we'll just get another generic hand, thumb situation going on here. Oh God, have I drawn a thumb on the right side of the... I'm just imagining, everybody, if I had to throw my hand back, have I drawn the thumb on the right side? Maybe. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I can't even get my head around it. Let's just pretend that I have, although I'm starting to suspect that I haven't. We'll have an inverse hand. Oh my goodness, how creepy weird. Anyway, so if we do the same thing... Oh no, it'd be rotated round. Yeah, no, it does work. Oh, thank God. So if we just do a very similar thing on this side here, maybe just the thumb is going to be on this side of the hand, so we'll ignore that. Lovely. Then the rest of the hand coming round, and perhaps these fingers are all just going to be a bit easier together, creating a bit more of a simple shape, just for the sake of expediency and moving on. So something like that, then obviously I can kind of join that up and make that whatever we might want it to be a little bit later. Something there, probably becoming underwear up around here. But it gives you the right idea. We're going up and away, but we don't have to draw everything on one plane. As long as you can kind of map out another square space, another plane and angle that the rest of the body might fall on, you can really change up the perspectives and mess it around. So let's go on to something a bit more extreme, but also quite simple in terms of when a character is just kind of reaching out to us as a viewer, like a really big hand, because it's much closer to us than the rest of a character's body. So let's just have a head around about here. I'll draw the hand over on the left hand side just to make this all fit on the page. Maybe the character themselves though is going to look more over to the right, and I'm trying to make this fairly loose and quick because I know these tutorials always end up being longer than I plan them to, so I'm just going to try to get this one across with some loose ideas. I'll try to neaten it up when I go into time lapse. And then in this example we'll imagine that the chest of this character, maybe they're leaping or flying along, just so that I fit in the page. I'm going to have the body go right off to the left as well, and then kind of looking back at us and reaching out the hand. So maybe doing like a come fly with me Superman style thing, which never made any sense from the original Superman films. That's for another time. So if we imagine then at the shoulders here, again I'm going to do a very similar thing that I did last time. I'm going to have a nice big hand first, because that's nearest to us as the viewer, and then I'm going to tuck the arm behind the hand as it goes away from us back to the shoulder. So if I go somewhere around about here, and I'm going to make this nice and big compared to the head and the shape of this particular character. In fact, probably going to have a smaller head than anything, perhaps something like that. And this hand is going to be sort of right out towards us, beckoning us maybe, or reaching out to sort of hold on. So if we get thumb shape up here, and what I'm going to do when we've got hands reaching out to us, and there will be another hand tutorial in the future, so do keep your comments coming along, I really love them, and your suggestions, is that when we map out fingers like this, they're going to tend to be ellipses at the very end to show us that we're looking down on the fingertip, the finger bud, so to speak. So it gives us a slightly different way to kind of look at and view those sort of elements of things. So if we go round about here, I'm going to get firstly an ellipse in. And again, my lines aren't perfect because normally I would be turning this page by now. But let's just bring a finger back around about here. Get another ellipse in around about here. You notice I've just drawn a rough arc, a line to help dictate for me how far out I'm going to map these fingers. And we'll bring this one back in. Might put this character as to be wearing gloves or something like that. It's always a really good cheat to make it easier. Next finger, probably going to have it further out in fact. So let's go round about down here. And then back in. Like so. And then a little finger just shooting off down here. Slightly to the side as well. So I'm making it flatter along the top edge. Then coming back into the hand. So if we just bring it back and outline it a little bit strongly there, and just map out the shape like so, it gives us this rough idea of what is going on. Excellent. Just get those fingers in, bring it back. The fingers themselves, we kind of see where they slot into the very edge of the hand. We're seeing this at a bit of an angle. So you've got your kind of top palm zone there, your palm area for your chopping knife part of the hand down there, and then all the thumb muscle and area on the inside there. So now that I've got that as I like it, I have another elliptical shape to kind of show where the wrist joins onto the arm. And now I'm just going to map my way back in, back down to this shoulder point here. So I'm just going to bring in a nice big foreshortened forearm. It's almost just a circle that has a slight egg shape to it and fits right up towards the wrist. And then I know that I can get the rest of the arm is basically just going to follow a very similar shape. And then it's this shoulder zone. Everything's foreshortened back to the character as it reaches up to us as a viewer. So very quickly, if I just put in a bit more body perhaps, it's not overly important for the sake of this tutorial. Maybe they're really jumping and spinning away and doing some crazy angles we won't worry about. And then we've got a collarbone zone in here, so the center line's down there. And we'll just drop this character a little bit of chest, simply because we can. Just something there. A little, he says. And then just something around about there as well. Excellent. And then maybe the center line somewhere there. So again, let's just check through the camera phone, make sure that's in focus. It is just about. Let's just jiggle that button on the camera. Lovely. And excellent. There you kind of go. We've got something that's really shooting out and up towards us as a viewer. So that's kind of a really simple way of it. If you imagine that we've got the arm itself following along in a tubular space, really we're just making that space really wide where it's nearest, and then just zooming it down and away, again vanishing this box shape away from us as it goes into the body, if you kind of know what I mean. This hand's at a bit more of an angle. It's kind of jaunty like that, waving towards us as opposed to straight up and away. But the effect that we're after is still pretty much exactly that. Probably going to stick a glove on here. Who knows? Now, that's good for hands. Let's have a go at something else nice and extreme. Let's have a big, powerful kick. And I'm going to try to occupy like a space that goes right across here, and we'll fit another drawing in the corner. So for this example, I'm going to just firstly imagine the line or the weight of everything. So if we have a foot coming right up here, when it comes to drawing these extreme shapes, these extreme angles, you really need to kind of just map out. I keep saying that a lot. Just keep mapping out a lot of what you're doing. So I might have some hips of this character here, but all the weight and power and thrust is going to come off of this kick. So maybe the rest of the body is just going to occupy this zone here. Just going to map it in with a rough box. That's going to be the head, body, torso. It's all about this kick shape coming up towards us. So for the sake of that whole foreshortening again, imagine this box shape that just gets really, really big as it comes towards the viewer, towards us. And then the rest of the body is probably just going to fall away perhaps. Maybe I'll just have an inside edge to everything falling off the page like so. So this is going to be a behind kick. If any of you guys like your karate and stuff like that, we'll call it ushiro-geri. But for this character, I'm just going to go right up here and have a really big, powerful sole of the foot. So maybe some kind of boot heel is going to be right here. This is where all the action and the attention might be for a particular type of drawing that you might be doing. It's going to shoot off up and at us. The rest of the foot shape pointing down. All the weight and power of the kick is on the heel itself with a good ushiro-geri as opposed to say a mawashi-geri or something like that. Yeah, I remember. Just about remember having done martial arts as a child. Just. Let's get that shape a bit better, like so. And then the rest of the leg is really just going to go down into the torso shape, which is round about here. So let's say this, something like that, is where our hips are going to be. So I'm going to firstly just map down the majority of this space, because remember, if I want a halfway point that might be where the knee is, because it's foreshortened, I'm going to imagine it curved away, and it's going to be much further back and away from us than halfway as well. So the majority of this space, right up to about here, is still going to be the bottom of the leg and the calf. So if we have just the ankle and calf shape coming away from us, it is going to branch out where the calf muscles and the leg is thickest up there, as well as coming back in. And then behind that, we're going to fit in the rest of the shape and features. So maybe a knee is around about here. And then most of the calf and the muscle that does the kicking is going to be all up and around about here. Going to obviously be doing similar stuff, shooting out from this side really strongly. And then maybe we're looking right down from the underside of the carriage there of the torso. So we might even get just a little bit of line in for where the bum might be coming out as well. So if we just imagine then that this is the front of the undercarriage, we get a center line in around about there. It means that maybe the rest of the bum shape on the other cheek is here, and the rest of this whole leg is shooting off somewhere down there where it's pushing from the floor from. I'm just going to curve this up and away like so. Real difficult angle to have a play with, so don't worry too much about this zone and where the weight's going or anything like that. We'll just imagine that drops off. Actually, I'll leave some space anyway for the next drawing. And the rest of the body, the underside of the area, center of the chest, the lips that helps us understand where the rib cage is like that. It's all around about there, which means in this character maybe the head is up here, perhaps looking back as the kick or strikes being performed, and that means that we'll have a shoulder circle kind of blocking a bit of the view there, and there'll probably be one round the other side. So again, this character looking up from the underside, perhaps there's just a bit of breast around about here and here, just from the angle that we see the chest up at, as the kick shoots off up towards here. Brilliant. I'll turn that into the sole of a shoe in a bit. Maybe there's just an arm, maybe it's just sticking out a little bit here. You can probably just see just a bit of the hand as the technique's getting pulled off. Something like so. Okay, so there we've got a little idea of a few common examples. We've got different planes, we've got a big hand coming right towards us, a viewer. Don't be worried about getting it perfect or working out the degree and angle and the rate of expansion of an object as it comes towards us. As long as you understand it as an overview, you can get away with a lot of rough guesstimation when you're drawing your organic shaped characters. When you're doing perspective with buildings, it can become very strict, very straight lines, get the ruler out all the time. But with the organic shapes, as long as it follows the idea of it for the most part, you don't have to stress too much. It might seem very daunting to do, but the second you start just playing around with it, just remember if it's near to the viewer, make it slightly bigger and drop things away. Just get loads of practice in and it's going to feel a bit more natural every time you have a go. So hand right towards us, maybe a kick with a foot shooting out towards us, a viewer, and the rest of the body kind of diminishes away. And then maybe just a standard one will do. A more of a sit-down scene with maybe legs out. And I just want to talk about when we don't have to do it too much, but still ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do is, and I want it to end up around about here so it fits on the page. So I'm going to draw a character maybe with a head height around about here. This might not be the best proportioned character in the world already, so let's see what we can fit in. I've already realised it's going to have to fit behind this foot. So if we have a character up here who's going to be sitting down on the floor like so, which means the bum and waist and hips are already right down there. The shoulder lines around about here. So we're going to get in a torso shape up and around here like so. That would be the front. Maybe the tummy lines up in here. Get a neck on. I'm just very quickly mapping out the basic shapes of this character, simply because I want to have a character that is going to be sitting with their legs out straight. One leg is going to be off to the side. We're going to see that as a side-on view, and the other is going to come straight towards us. We're going to use some very similar techniques as we have done right here. So in this character, if I just imagine we've got some hands somewhere off to front like so. So maybe just fingers splayed out, keeping this really light and loose as ever. Something like that, and then something like this. So let's just very quickly turn this into some arms down here and up here. Excellent. So let's worry about this leg that's going to be shooting off around about here. Now I've got my overall height of the body and the head to be around about here. So I know that proportionally, because it's roughly half the character, leg's probably going to finish around about this imaginary line here. So if I make a halfway knee point here, I'm just going to pop in a very gentle thigh line. It's going to meet back in, maybe on the underside as well. It sits on the floor. That's going to drop out into the shin, which is around about here, which obviously has loads of curve away from the calf. And then that in its own right is going to become our foot zone. But I'm probably going to draw that straight into some kind of boot or shoe. So I'm just going to get a very generic heel shape in. Excellent. Hopefully that's coming up on the camera phone. I'm just going to outline it a little bit so that it shows up fairly nice and clearly underneath and along. And so now we've got an idea. We've got this height of this shoe. It's going to happen at a very similar place right over here. So if we imagine a straight line that comes out, and then I'm just going to make it slightly bigger for that foreshortening. We'll have the sole of this particular foot maybe just up here. So just figuring in below the elbow line. So we'll just bring it over the top. And again, get that underside of a foot kind of shape. It's going to be slightly lower down as well. It's coming towards us. The vanishing point, if you imagine, is probably around about here, disappearing away from us as a viewer. And then I'm just going to get the heel on, outside edge, and again we're going to disappear up the leg back towards the body. So just behind it I can show this off really simply with basically just some slight circles. A circled off shape that's the calf and the majority of the leg coming down to the foot. Slight flat circle, flat ellipse where the knee might be to mark it out. And then now sitting behind all of it, another big circular curve that takes up most of the meat of the leg. It's going to be there, and it comes back to the body up here. And then it just joins back into the hip. And then we just get the rest of our character shape back on form. Neck's quite long on this one. Probably a young skinny girl character. And down like so. So, let's have a quick look through the camera phone. Hopefully that's all been in focus just about. I hope this series of very rough lines gets across the last part I wanted to share about the current free perspective for shortening tutorials that we're going through. We've done a load of the basics for characters overall. But when it comes to limbs that get really close and up towards us, just still imagine that it's in a tube or a space. Still map it out. Still get a line in to show the weight or the power of the kick or the force, however you want to think about it, shooting off there, and map to it. So really nice and big as it gets close. We know the point that everything's coming from thanks to this line, and then work back. Work back from this foot, back up the calf, back up the leg to the body. This is one of the few times that I work in this direction, because most of my characters I like to have from the head to the torso and everything grows out of the torso. But with foreshortening, still know where the body is, where the head and the torso is going to be, and know the point where you connect, such as the shoulder, but then go straight to the biggest thing you've got that's really near us, and then work back behind it, back up the forearm, back over the bicep and tricep, back to the shoulder. And that's kind of how I personally like to map this all in. Right, well, hopefully that's been of some use and some hope. Obviously, get in the comments below. Let me know about all the other sort of tutorials and things you want to see for future videos. I love bloody making them. I'm glad you enjoy learning from them, or at least finding that they help a little bit. I'm going to drop into time-lapse, of course, and put some characters on top of these shapes, and see you guys at the end. And welcome back. So hopefully putting some characters onto these shapes has really given you a bit more of an idea of how they might look when you get your foreshortening skills down. Now when it comes to obviously just putting the limbs in, get your largest part in first and work your way back to whatever its anchor point might be. Starting at the foot, back to the hips, or the hand, back to the shoulders. Or if you're going to work on different angled characters or dealing with different planes, still draft it out. Still work out roughly where one plane is and then maybe where the other is, so that you can kind of get the grasp of where your character is still going to fit into the various shapes, and it helps you map it on a page a little bit more. Thank you very much for watching. As always, you lovely people, get in the comments below and let me know what other tutorials and other suggestions for the SAS you'd like to see. As ever, it is a pleasure. And don't forget to check out my Patreon page, because quite simply it's your support that makes all these tutorials and bits possible. Link in the description below. Otherwise, have lovely lives. Take care. And a great big thank you as ever to my supporters on Patreon, where we have all the alternative drawings, editors' commentary and other bits not safe for YouTube. These tutorials are always made possible thanks to your support. Take care.